Hi, folks. It's Steve. I am here with Kristin Sinclair. Hi, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Steve. Thank you for
Hey,
having me.
it is my pleasure. As you know, we're going to talk about you as a freedom fighter. And just for our audience, I just want to remind everybody that I call many, many people freedom fighters, even from those little kids that stand up to schoolyard bullies, all the way up to people that take on entire municipalities because of mandates. Everybody's a freedom fighter. And I know that freedom fighters need to stay strong and to help strengthen others in their fight. So I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your fight. So, if you would, Kristen, explain to us what is the cause for which you're fighting?
Well, I never expected to go back into politics. I was very interested in a young age. My mom ran for office a number of times, and I grew up in the Republican Party, being the only elected Republican in Pennsauken as the eighth grade class president. That's how hard it was to get elected. So I went to college and law school and realized I'd like to have a private life. And I don't know that advocating is for me. So I went into a field of law that is commercial litigation, collection, insurance, money fights. It's very impersonal. I thought this is safe and I can do my job and be a mom and be a wife. Uh, and that was good for me. That was good enough. I was happy with life. Then came 2019, and at my annual appointment, 1 year after I had my second child, it was found that I had a significant lump. And after a mammogram and all of those things, I ended up having a very aggressive type of breast cancer. It was early stage caught, but it didn't really matter because of the aggressiveness. I had two lumpectomies, pre-surgery chemotherapy, 6 rounds, and 32 rounds of radiation. I did 14 rounds of targeted immunotherapy. I mean, I did everything. And I did it for all of 2019 and through 2020. So, being the professional patient that I was, my eyes were pretty wide open to the pandemic from the beginning. And the mask issue for me became my fight. I stayed home being an immune compromised person for about a month with my children and my husband, and we did the best we could. It wasn't until April 19th when we took a ride to the tulip farm, and there were a lot of cars. We were all just driving through. It was this nice Sunday afternoon, and there were some cars from Pennsylvania because it was South Jersey, right near the trying to think Sewell area. So Phil Murphy shut those places down. Tulip drive-through tulip farms had to shut down. It was too dangerous, and I thought, I can't live like this. So at that point, we were done the quarantine, but I still didn't feel confident enough that I was the right person to start advocating. But I knew there would come a point. Being the cancer patient that I was like a shield. You know, you can't really tell the woman who won't wear the mask, what we're doing this for you. I don't want you to do it for me, and don't force it on the children for me. So I was that right voice, but it took until probably December 2020 when I had done all my treatments and I was begging my oncologist. I'd gone back to work. My sons went back to school, begging my Philadelphia oncologist, get me that vaccine. I'll take it. I don't need to read anything about it. I don't care. I need to live my life. My body's already a dumpster from all the medication. And it looks to me like somebody's going to need to get it in order to go to the grocery store in the next year. I was getting very nervous about the direction of authoritarianism that was really developing. So I chose to be the one in my family, and my oncologist couldn't get it for me. Every month it was, nope, we're not, we're not, nothing for you. We're focusing on more important populations. Like our desk clerks, I found out that were behind glass and collecting a credit card were fully vaccinated before I was on the list. So I got it in New Jersey. It was 2 years to the day after my first breast cancer diagnosis that I walked in the line. That was terrifying. It was 1,700 people in the morning and 1,700 in the afternoon that they did. And no, there's no comparison. There's not no equivalency. But a woman in front of me said, I really feel scared. I feel like the gas chamber. It just, we had winding buildings and military personnel, and it was a very scary experience. Um, but I just felt that I had to do it. So I was okay after that one. And then 3 weeks later, um, I had a medication reaction to what I was already on, I think. And the second vaccine, I had a terrible night of delusions and staying up all night. And I thought I was going to die. I wouldn't go to sleep because I was so afraid my sons would find me in the morning. So, it was a very scary event for me. And I did end up going to the hospital the next night with a friend to get fluids and, just get checked out and cleared. And I was okay. But at that point, I knew it was time for me to really break out um, and start using my voice. I had watched other parents and followed different local people who were advocating to take the masks off the kids. And they were doing videos and going in stores and, bringing their kids. And it was this weird time of breaking rules in front of each other to encourage courage, to get people to do more and say more. So I started writing open letters and attended the board meeting in February 21 because my school still had no plan to return back full time. And I thought it was outrageous. Time's up, ladies and gentlemen, of the teachers union. I'm sorry, but the cancer patient you're worried about, have been back to work since June 2020. So, you know, my son, he wanted to be there, or else I would have taken him and put him in I was willing to homeschool him, all this, but he wanted to be around the friends. So I made it my focus that I would fix the school for him because I could buy my way into a mask exemption for him, but they were still planning on separating him from everybody else. He would be behind glass. He would be 6 feet apart, everyone in the hallway. So there was no way. So I said, I have to unmask the entire state. And that's what I began to work on. Between the local parents that I met, a few of us stood outside the Board of Ed office at the end of February 21 with our signs, and the press came, and the superintendent, after he was, stuck with the three of us there, crazy moms, brought us in and we had a meeting. And I told him, as the other two moms were really asking the questions, I was observing him. Told him, you're getting the masks off in September. We're not doing this again another year. Well, it didn't, we continued that summer fighting. And unfortunately, with what Governor Murphy did in August that year, taking the decision away from the schools, we had our work cut out for us. So fortunately, during this time, I had met in April 2021, a woman who is local to me in the same town, who is a medical biostatistician. And she too had children that were affected by the pandemic, and she was tracking it the whole time, all the death rates. And she could prove with statistics that the wave was over, all of these things, that the children had a near zero risk of hospitalization or death, that the fear that was instilled in parents was incredibly overstated. It was disgusting. So we spread our message all over the state. I made 80 Facebook groups that were branded a certain way so that they were county, town, and a larger group. Every group had the same flag photo so people could find us, that it was a nonpartisan, just meet me under this flag, this old tattered flag. And so we found local parents to take over each Facebook group that were active enough to bring people in, teach them how to advocate, teach them what to say at their meetings. We did letter campaigns and everything we could think of. We did shoe campaigns where they dropped all the shoes of children along the walkway at school. If there was going to be a vaccine mandate, it represented kids who would leave. So we made a lot of press. Our Facebook group is up to about 13,000, newsletters probably around 9 or 10,000 subscribers, and it does very well in its open rate. We don't take in money at this point. We've been asking people to support certain candidates or certain we have a friend who runs NJ5 PAC, which is an official lobbying PAC. So we've connected with every grassroots group that we can, and we've stayed in touch with them to keep monitoring as citizens who are, maybe some of us are elected, some of us are not, but those who are still concerned about how the government acted. And we're staying together so that at any time we're ready to pivot and get back into action, because we will never trust again. We can never sit back again and just trust. I mean, 2019 is never coming back, unfortunately. That was our hashtag, 2019 or bust, that we wanted normalcy for the kids. So instead, I have to sit on my local school board just to make sure there is representation for parents. And I love it. I'm so grateful to have been elected. The election last June was our deadline to register, and it was right when I was being re-diagnosed. I had a metastatic recurrence last summer. So I've been in treatment since August, and I've had some good months. Right now, I'm having a recurrence month, and new planning and new treatment will be starting in radiation. But what gets me on fire still is not worrying about my health. It's becoming the voice for those who are afraid. So last 2 weeks ago, Medford Township had its board meeting for our budget. And I have a fan who comes and watches everything I do. She is a mother of a transgender female now. An adult child, does not go to the schools, is long graduated, but the mother runs, as president, an organization, a chapter of PFLAG Collingswood. So this group monitors people like me, that sit on local school boards unpaid. And she has met with me and tried to let me know that she's watching me and doesn't feel comfortable with my views. So she came to our board meeting 2 weeks ago and sat through the whole thing, and then tried to slip a piece of paper, an envelope, blank envelope towards me at the end when I was chatting with another member. She said, "This is something you tweeted last month, and I find it offensive." So I told her to give it to the president or give it to the lawyer or file the ethics complaint, but I'm not going to pick that up. I'm not looking at it. I don't care what you think. I don't care that you don't agree with me. I'm not touching that. You need to do what you need to do, but I have a First Amendment and I'm not here to please you. So I gave it to the president, that was, and it's a small thing, but it's a big deal, because you have total strangers to what's going on in education right now, who have their one issue that they're concerned about, clouding their entire judgment, attacking people who have nothing to do with the children. I am not interacting with kids, turning them into little bigots as she imagines. And yet this is the intimidation level that starts. This is level 1 or 2. There will be more, but that's why I ran. And I'm so glad that I won, because I can mentor others to not be afraid, when that happens. Don't take that role if you're so concerned about losing it that you would compromise your values or compromise your voice to please somebody who you don't even respect and doesn't respect you anyway. So that is what I've stepped into as I've moved out of the, so active advocacy, standing outside. Now I'm on the inside, hoping to teach others.
What a story. Let me thank you for taking such a strong stand and being so consistent. I think most people would say, in spite of the fact that you're combating serious illness, but it sounds to me that um, you're combating this cancer is in a way fuel for your fire. You're not doing it in spite of it. You're almost like using this this energy to fuel your activism. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. I felt that it gave me the right and the responsibility to speak out, both, about what I saw inside because I was in medical facilities when nobody was there. I was all over the place. I was out. I didn't have a choice. So it was very frustrating to see perfectly healthy people who were not experiencing what I was experiencing, treating themselves as if, the sky is falling. And if you come near me, you're a murderer. If you don't take medicine into your body, you're killing me. I mean, to me, that was the most offensive thing, having been through so much medication and treatment. You can't tell someone they have to do something for you. Bodily autonomy is everything to me. And what happened to the children, it just hurt me so much because I knew I could pull my mask down whatever I wanted at an appointment. I have that autonomy as an adult, but a child is told, keep that mask on or else you'll be in trouble, and they will throw up in them. I had nurses, friends tell me what was going on in schools, how kids would come with mildewy, soaking wet masks in the morning. Um, my son was experiencing nosebleeds and um, speech delays, but there were a number of other health issues, whether it was the teeth were rotting, the disgusting things that I heard it hurt me. And I couldn't not use my shield of being, my status to help others. So it gave me that courage and that fuel, yes.
Have you always been such a courageous person, or have these circumstances brought that out of you?
Um, I would say it's genetic. I was born this way, unfortunately. I have my mother, who I find to be very brave, has just always spoken out, stood up. She works for the IRS, and she loves what she does. It's a prosecutorial family. My father is a cop, a retired cop. They're not together. My grandfather, my mother's father, was in World War II in Korea and shot down, and all of those things. Pilot, very just. My brother served in Afghanistan, and it was a little bit after he served that some of the censorship started happening so overtly. And I watched it with the military guys, that when they were in the parking garage after January 6th, they were sleeping in the parking garage. Just the way they were treated and how they weren't allowed to speak out and they were getting their phones searched, felt an obligation to my family that served to speak out. And so I have always been that way, but I spent a lot of years just focused on, my family, and just being oblivious, not trusting, but, not wanting to be in the conflict, because it is. And then when you're a lawyer, every day is conflict, no matter, even if it's with your own, self, your own client. So it's something that is just innate, and I couldn't run from it.
So you have a family legacy of service, specifically service to the country, service to the community, and do you feel like you can't let them down?
My sons is my family, my adult family know how hard things are for me, and they would love for me to just rest. But they also know that sometimes rest is not what heals you or, empowers you. But why I keep going, and a lot of it was driven by wanting to leave it all for my sons that they could be proud of. That if other parents were quiet during this time, their mother was not. And even if I'm not here, in 5 years to talk about it or remind them, they're old enough now to remember what happened, and we still talk about it. And someday they can read things that I wrote, or see interviews and think, wow, mom was on Fox News multiple times, and she looked good too.
Yeah.
Just, I'm a very humble person as well.
Right.
But it's a legacy in progress for me. It's, do it now. I'm not going to write the book later. I'm just going to do it, and you can find the pieces.
That is marvelous. And you're right, it is your legacy. I mean, people need to determine what their life means and how they want to be remembered. And looks like you are seizing this moment to not appear as a victim, no, to appear as a leader and to inspire other people to step up when they're called upon. Can you, would you be comfortable using that word calling? Have you received a calling?
I did. I did receive a calling. I'm a big Rush Limbaugh fan, and I am a believer. I do, and it was something that came back to me. I grew up in church, but I strayed very far away because I was, very comfortable telling myself I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And I didn't have children, and, things didn't mean what they mean to me now. But there was a moment when I was obsessively on my phone looking for people like me. And my two sons were very young, and I had them in the shower. They were okay showering together at that age. And I was in there, and the older one accidentally hit the younger one by accident as he was jumping out. And the younger one was screaming, crying, of course. And so, of course, I dumped my phone and I'm trying to comfort the younger one. At the same time, the older one starts crying. And the noise was upsetting him. And my other son wouldn't stop crying. And I was trying to explain that sometimes you have to hold people until they're done crying. And even if you're the one that hurt them and it was an accident, it's okay. You still have to be there through it. And it just hit me, and something, I had a wave. I realized that my son, the older one, was developing tendencies that I thought were related to autism and masking. I felt that he was losing his communication skills, and it just hit me and it terrified me and brought me to my knees. And I had not been brought to my knees, ever. Not even the first cancer diagnosis didn't do it. So something about his speech and all those issues, my right in front of my face, this is happening. And the answer came to me. I just felt a wave when I was watching a show. A week later, my son was sitting on an American flag blanket, and we were watching the news of Tiger Woods be airlifted out of the car accident. And it was like deja vu. I had written about Tiger Woods before and how he inspired me because he never quit. So seeing him in that state, and then my son on the flag, that this blanket that I didn't realize was made in China, and it took forever to come. I was so pissed in America, just something told me how to put it all together, who to look for, and how to signal, and how important signaling is in politics, how so much is understated. And so that's why I wore the red coat when I went to do my protest, and my American flag scarf was a signal that, we are turning on you and you need to hurry up and figure this out. And what do you know? A week later, we had a plan for return to school.
What's the end game? I mean, I understand that we don't have control over everything. You have control over your reaction. To the best of your ability, you're going to create an inspirational legacy. But at the same time, what would you like to see to be the fruits of your labor? What at the end of the day do you feel you're able to say, at least we accomplished this? And what would that be? What's the end game here for you?
In the short term, it'll be ensuring that my own town adopts policies over the next few months, because we are updating all of our policies, and I'm on the policy committee. So I want to make sure that the policies that affect children and parental rights and secrets and privacy and safety all come together in the right way. I'm being accused by my fan of not supporting transgender rights. I haven't even had the opportunity to vote or speak on this at all. So that's, an assumption on her part. But what she is correct about is I don't think the direction of New Jersey's curriculum or standards is right for children in the younger grades, the K through 5. I mean, the older, but see it being a problem. I see an explosion of name changes in the middle schools from one gender to the other in the nearby town, in the same school where there's assaults happening by those same students to students who don't identify. So there's this reverse bullying. I want to see policies that bring us all to the middle, that bring normalcy. If we need unisex bathrooms, that's what we need. But I still believe in spaces that are separate by sex. I still believe in there are two genders, and I believe that adults should be able to choose what they want to do with their bodies. I agree, I have no objection to those, calling someone by whatever name, or happy to do it, happy to respect the person. But what I don't want is the education system being a vehicle to take the children from educating them about sex, handing them the Planned Parenthood packet, helping them transition without their parents' knowledge, whether socially or medically, and then New Jersey becoming a sanctuary state for other parents to bring their children and get jurisdiction from the New Jersey courts. So all of those things are happening here. I just want to see safety and innocence still for the children in those grades. And if that's possible, I don't, how they can be safe and innocent at the same time. It's difficult. That's the direction I want to go.
So you mentioned implementing proper policies over the short term. Do you have any scope on what you'd like to see happen within the next generation? I mean, do you have any idea of what should be happening for us in the long term?
I think we all know that our kids need less device time and they need more interaction socially in real life. And I just would love to see people be able to talk again and have different opinions without it becoming, a career ending, name calling, life canceling event if you don't agree. Like I just said, I believe in two genders. I mean, that's a big risk. But I knew when I got into this, I had to be willing to lose my job. And I was. And if you're able to push past that level of fear of cancellation, then I think your honesty will come through and your heart will come through. And so somebody who might disagree with you should hopefully be able to hear what your motives are. And my motives are not to hurt kids who feel differently. It's to teach compassion and kindness and inclusion without having to impose the sexual part of that topic. They can learn about differences and just being empathetic, overall in so many ways that I putting the burden of adult sexuality in their heads before they're ready. It's imprinting and it's unhelpful, I think, for them be able to feel comfortable talking about differences.
I get this, and you mentioned the importance of moving through your fear. It seems to me that the people that are most oppressive, that are trying to silence others who disagree with them, and the people who are trying to enforce their ideology on others are very much driven by fear. Um, would you agree with that?
I would think so. I would think there's a fear that there'll be a reversion of tolerance, that we've come very far in many ways. And maybe there's a fear that if people are allowed to say, if I'm allowed to say there are two genders, then the next thing you know, I'm going to be persecuting someone who, you know, I think that's what a lot of the fear is, that there's a foothold and you must always continue to claw forward or else you might regress. When I feel conservatism is exact opposite. It's finding the objective morality, making laws in that way and keeping it that way, no matter what cultural trends and fads come through. We should have this baseline understanding of what fairness, equality, and what are the right roles for government versus what we have now. Just too much control over how things go, both in the economy and culturally.
So you're kind of describing an idea that the best defense is a good offense type of thing, where these folks who claim difference are feeling like, well, I have to go on the attack before they attack me. Is that kind of like what you're saying?
Yeah.
So therefore, if they're coming from a fearful perspective, getting back to what you said a few minutes ago, you have fears, we all have fears, but you're trying to move through your fears and be honest and bold and be who you are. So do you think that with some of the people who are going on the attack, um, you might inspire them even to transcend their own fear and to not act from continually from such a fearful state? Do you think that's possible with some people?
With some, absolutely. I haven't yet had much success in my own town. I have a few people that are very opposed to me. And even though we've, exchanged ideas, there's just not going to be a meeting of the minds on some. So that is why I try to push so aggressively when I am attacked, because I don't think someone who brings, an anonymous envelope as an intimidation method is going to want to sit down and ever really listen to me. I already tried that with her. So the next step is restraining order. I mean, I'm not going to play the fear game in that they play. I'm going to take it right to the end. And I think that's the best way to shut that kind of rhetoric and intimidation down. I watched it over the last 2 years with people who got elected before me, and they're tied up in ethics complaints and having teachers unions come to the meetings in mass. And I'm not going to have that. And if I do, I'm going to have the support of my board. And because I've been honest with them, I've said, here's exactly what, my Facebook, my Twitter, and my Instagram are all public for a reason. I unlocked them. Have at it. Take whatever you want. So I think if you live your life in that way and you're also confident, you should be able to get past the fears.
You get past the fears, and as you just said, sometimes people can wake up and sometimes they won't, and then it becomes a question of defeating them. It becomes a win or lose proposition, because if they get their way, you lose yours. And you have to be prepared to use force in the sense of a restraining order, the force of law, um, to be able to protect your and our interests. That's sometimes what it comes down to. Sound about right?
It's what has to be done.
One last question. You've been so kind with sharing, and I think that you are providing such a service to people and telling the story. Um, Everybody has highs and lows. When you reach your lowest of the lows, and in your situation, it could be an ongoing thing. Do you have any resources that keep you going? Is it books, or is there any sources of strength that you use that help sustain you?
I have a lot of tools that I use. I've journaled for the last 2 years, and one of the journals that I do is a letter to my sons. I keep it very positive, but I write them lessons, and I do, reach deep for faith when everything feels overwhelming, when I get a new treatment plan, when I learn that my medication's failing and I have, mets growing again in different places. I have to remember that I remind myself, one, the last lesson I would ever want my sons to learn is to see their mother quit. So you keep going no matter what. And something that Rush said kept me going, when he was gone for a while, was to never give up on America. It's never time. So it's never time for me to give up on fighting what I'm fighting for my life and for my sons, but it's also never time for me to give up and go back and say, I can't help you guys. I don't have anything to give. That's the good part about what my illness is I can still give just by talking to someone, writing things for them. I don't have to feel the best all the time to give. And also a therapist weekly. You got to have that.
Absolutely.
Everybody needs an unload place.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And you're right. The only way we lose is if we quit. Because the other folks, when people are up to no good and oppressive and tyrannical stuff, that takes a lot out of them. And it's not a sustainable campaign in the long term at all. And for us to prematurely give up the fight is just handing them the victory they will never earn.
So we must grow the fighters.
We must grow the fighters, and you're an attorney and you're head of a state organization, and more power to you. And the fact remains, as you're well aware, people are still fighting the fight in their own living rooms and in their own personal lives with family members and with the neighbors. And the fact of the matter is that the entire society has become a huge arena for the battle in our homes, in our schools, in our courts. And that means that everybody's called to duty. And in the wrong way, people stand up. Does that sound about right?
Yes. You're called to what you're equipped for. And
That's right.
And don't forget the quivers in your arrow. Train them up young too.
Absolutely. Kristin, you're a marvel. I want to thank you so much for being with us. And I personally look forward to speaking with you again because you're a source of strength for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. And I'm just glad that I felt well enough to be who I want to be most days.
Amen. Thank you.
Take care.